Alright, so I know this chapter's been out for a while, but I purposefully wanted to wait for this version of the English translation, and it was definitely worth the wait in my opinion. The scans are in really high quality as you can tell, but more importantly, I just wanted to honor the work and effort that was put behind delivering this, even if it meant almost waiting more than a week by now. But I also want to say thank you to anyone and everyone who's ever taken their time out of the day to even give us a rough or a not so accurate translation. I know getting translations in general for a new Ragnarok chapter can feel random or out of place if you're not a part of the community, but as for someone like me who's fully invested into the manga, then I just want to say thank you to not only the group that's given us this high quality translation, but to everyone who's given their time to just give us any kind of translation. I can definitely see how it keeps the community alive, and I really appreciate it. But with that out of the way, guys, let's just get into the chapter here. There is a lot to talk about. So the chapter picks up from where we last left off. We're seeing Beelzebub and Tesla staring each other down after Beelzebub had attacked him without even moving, and we're getting some of the audience's reaction here until we're hearing from Galileo, and this is absolutely one of the coolest character designs we've seen for any audience member, right? And he's talking to the audience here who's trying to figure out how Beelzebub attacked Tesla. He says, "You mustn't be deceived by initial appearances. The cause of the ground splitting and the pillar being destroyed is a most elementary physical law, yes." And then Edison interrupts him. He says it's a vibration. And Galileo's just thinking to himself after Edison had interrupted him. He says, "That was the line I wanted to say the most." So I'm really liking how much personality the scientists are getting here. It's a nice touch to the whole theme of the god's greatest scientist Beelzebub versus humanity's greatest scientist Tesla. But then we're cutting over to Ares and Hermes, and Hermes is telling him the same thing here about the effects of vibrations. He says, "Sometimes vibration comes in the form of sound waves and destroys solid. Other times it comes in the form of an earthquake and shakes the ground." And it's interesting that Hermes is mentioning this, since we know he's a really talented musician, so I would imagine he's familiar with the effects of sound waves as a weapon from his own experience. But getting back to the fight here, we're seeing Beelzebub get right into the action now. He lunges himself forward at Tesla and closes the distance by using his hand to attack, but Tesla is able to dodge the full impact of his attack here. And using this attack called Palmyra Beat of the Devil's Wings, Beelzebub is able to just barely cut the armor of Tesla's suit, and this is because he's using the vibrations around his hand to manifest the surroundings of it to be as sharp as a blade. And I love how Hermes is taunting Ares here as he continues explaining all of this, and again, I think it makes a lot of sense that he would know so much about the effects of vibrations being used as sound waves. But then we're cutting over to Adamus and Zeus, and this is really interesting because it's confirming what I was suspecting this whole time about why Beelzebub was so angry coming into round 8, and I'm referring to when Adamus replies to Zeus saying how unusual it is to see Beelzebub so out of character, and then Adamus says, "Just goes to show how important Hades was to him. I mean, for a loner like him, Big Bro was basically the only guy he could ever rely on." And this makes so much sense because if you go to chapter 62 at the start of Hades' backstory, it's Ares who specifically refers to Hades as the god whom other gods rely on the most. So I'm really hoping there's a second backstory for Beelzebub now, right? I mean, a large part of his motive fighting in round 8 instead of any other round is Hades' death, so I think it deserves a lot more attention. Maybe a second backstory could cover their history as the one friend Beelzebub was able to make, who knows. But getting back to the fight, Tesla is now trying to understand what exactly is going on, and I like how humble he is about it, right? He just shakes it off and then looks at Beelzebub and says, "At any rate, that was some impressive power. Had you hit me straight on with it, I would have been cut clean in two, or maybe not." And then we're cutting over to Brunhild and Gol, and although Gol notices how dangerous the effects of vibration can be against Tesla and his Voland, we're seeing Brunhild pretty confident that he could still win this. But now we're seeing Tesla initiate his first real attack this fight, and the art this chapter is just so insanely gorgeous, right? I don't really know what it is. I know round 7 had a lot of good moments where the art really shined, but I just can't help but notice some sort of change with round 8, and I can't really describe what exactly, it just looks better. And this is a good example of what I'm talking about, the way Tesla just looks when he rushes at Beelzebub here, and Beelzebub himself looks somewhat surprised. You can even see he was about to use his hand again to try and cut Tesla as he's running into him, but he then changes his mind and decides to dodge instead. And then Tesla takes a step forward and tries to punch him again. He does it 3 times actually, and each time Beelzebub is forced to dodge. And this move is called the Plasma Pulse Punch. It's even able to split the ground. But what he does next is so smart. He intentionally tries to punch Beelzebub one more time, but Beelzebub notices that he doesn't charge this punch like he did the 3 times before. So he didn't even need to dodge this attack, but this is all part of Tesla's plan. He baited Beelzebub into moving somewhere he could have predicted he was going to be, and when we see him next, he's actually charging both of his arms this time instead of only one. And now that Beelzebub's on the defensive after having dodged that fake punch from earlier, this ultimately gives Tesla the advantage he needs to catch Beelzebub off guard. He even thinks to himself and says he's fast. So not only was his Plasma Pulse Punch destructive enough on his own, we're seeing this next attack carry that same effect but also much faster. And when we see this attack land, it's a cloud of dust until we see Beelzebub appear, and it turns out he was able to block this attack with his staff. He used it to make a wall of vibration surrounding him as some kind of shield. And you can see by how the ground split that had this attack landed, the area of effect would have been massive. But it's probably even more impressive that Beelzebub was able to seemingly block this attack without any struggle, because when we see him talking to Tesla next, all he can say is that your limit? Then hurry up and break. And using the staff to attack for the first time in this fight, we're seeing him use this new attack called Sorath-Vav, Fallen Angel of Gluttony, and Tesla decides to take this attack head on. He joins his hands together and charges them both in this new attack called the Plasma Pulse Punch Twin, and I think it's reasonable to assume that this attack should be a lot more effective than the last one he just did, right? Because in the previous attack, he only used one of his hands to punch while the other pushed him forward, but in this new attack, he's actually charging both of his punches. But by increasing the magnitude of his vibrations, Beelzebub just straight up dominates Tesla here, and again, he does this almost effortlessly while Tesla used his strongest attack we've seen from him so far in the fight. And I can't say it enough, the art just looks so good here, but when we see Tesla next, you can notice his volant is cracking, right? And not only that, his right arm looks like it took massive damage. He's also starting to bleed from his head. And this line from Beelzebub that he says here at the end of the chapter is so cool. He's just looking down on him like as if he's disappointed and says, "You neither, just as I thought you won't do." And this is in reference to Beelzebub looking for a way to die, and I guess what makes this so cool for me is that he looks more disappointed in Tesla than anything else. Like, he's not trying to trash talk him or anything like that, he's just being blatantly honest here. So I'm really curious about how this next chapter is supposed to play out, because this is so far an amazing start to the fight. It feels like a mesh between rounds 4 and 7. The way both of their fight IQs affect the flow of the fight like we saw in round 7, and the theme of dark and light that parallels to round 4. I'm especially interested to see what Tesla does in the next chapter, and besides the fight itself, I hope we see more from the audience, but now I'm also really looking forward to Tesla's backstory. I wonder if that's something we could see as soon as the next chapter, or maybe not, but again, I'm not sure what to expect really, but no matter how I look at it, I'm sure it'll be another banger. But that's gonna be the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and like always, before I end the video, I want to give a very special thanks to the channel's patrons: Iron, Justin, Nix EXP, Paranormal Beluga, Jedi Knight 104, Pedyuko, and Malekith. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for the support, guys, and for anyone wondering, you can sign up too and get into the monthly Q&A I'll be doing here on the channel. I'll be posting the next one up sometime at the start of November, so from now until the end of October, feel free to consider joining. You would also be helping me out a lot here in a massive way and get a special shout out like this in every single video. The link will be in the description below, or you could just search it yourself at patreon.com/Izanami. But other than that, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, I would greatly appreciate it. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this, and of course, if you're interested in more Record of Ragnarok, then make sure you subscribe. I'll be doing more here on the channel like always, and yeah, have a great day.